parents controlled my life for 25 years. Now they don't even know where I live. The first time I realized my life wasn't my own, I was 13. My birthday cake, chocolate with buttercream frosting, my favorite, sat half-eaten on our dining room table while my parents stood behind me, hands on my shoulders, as I opened my final gift. "This is the big one, Melissa," my father said, his voice carrying that unmistakable weight of expectation. Inside was a leather-bound planner, monogrammed with my initials, MGW, Melissa Grace Williams. Not exactly the iPod I'd been hoping for. "It's nice," I said, trying to hide my disappointment. My mother beamed. "It's for tracking your study schedule. Dr. Hendricks says organization is key for pre-med students." "Pre-med?" I asked. "But I'm in 8th grade." My father laughed, that booming, confident laugh that echoed through boardrooms and charity galas alike. "It's never too early to start preparing, kiddo. Your mother and I have it all mapped out." That night, after the candles were blown out and the guests had gone home, my parents sat me down in my father's study, a room I was usually forbidden to enter without permission. The walls were lined with medical textbooks and framed diplomas. My father, Dr. James Williams, neurosurgeon, and my mother, Dr. Catherine Williams, pediatric oncologist. Their success hung in the air like the scent of my father's expensive cologne. "We've enrolled you in advanced mathematics for next semester," my mother said, sliding a course catalog across the mahogany desk. "And we've hired Mr. Peterson to tutor you in chemistry on Saturdays." "But I have soccer on Saturdays," I protested. My parents exchanged a look, the kind adults share when a child has said something amusing but misguided. "Melissa," my father said gently, "soccer won't get you into Johns Hopkins." I didn't argue. I never did. Not then. Over the next 5 years, my life became a meticulously planned journey toward medical greatness. My bedroom walls, once decorated with posters of pop stars and soccer players, gradually transformed into a shrine to academic excellence. Awards, certificates, and honor roll recognitions replaced my childhood treasures. My parents proudly displayed my achievements to relatives, colleagues, and anyone who would listen. Our Melissa scored in the 99th percentile on her SATs, my mother would announce at dinner parties. "She's been corresponding with the dean of admissions at Harvard," my father would add, though this correspondence was just a form letter I'd received after attending a summer program. I was their masterpiece, the culmination of their professional success and personal ambition. At family gatherings, I was paraded around like a show pony, expected to recite my latest accomplishments, my college aspirations, my 5-year plan. My cousins played video games in the basement while I discussed the healthcare system with my uncle, a hospital administrator. "She's got once-in-a-generation brilliance," my father would boast. "But she's still humble. Aren't you, sweetheart?" I'd nod and smile, the perfect daughter, while inside, a quiet voice whispered, "Is this really what I want?" By senior year, I had a perfect GPA, was president of 3 clubs, volunteered at my parents' hospital, and had scored near perfect on my SATs. I applied to 12 prestigious universities, all chosen by my parents. Every essay was reviewed, every application meticulously crafted under their watchful eyes. When the acceptances started rolling in, my parents' excitement was palpable. But one letter changed everything. "Full scholarship to Ashworth University," my mother screamed when I opened the envelope at breakfast. "James, can you believe it?" My father's eyes glistened with uncharacteristic tears. "My alma mater. God, I'm proud of you, kiddo." The scholarship was unexpected. Ashworth wasn't even my top choice. It was my father's sentimental favorite, where he'd done his undergraduate work before Harvard Medical. The letter cited my exceptional academic record and leadership potential as reasons for the award. Move-in day at Ashworth arrived with military precision. My dorm room was in Westfield Hall, coincidentally, or perhaps not, the same building where my father had lived as a freshman 30 years earlier. My roommate was the daughter of one of my father's fraternity brothers. My schedule had been arranged to include professors who knew my parents. When they finally left, I sat alone on my perfectly made bed, surrounded by the life they had built for me, and felt a strange sensation creeping up my spine. Something wasn't right. This scholarship, this room, this path, it all felt too perfect, too arranged. That night, as my roommate chatted excitedly about sorority rush and freshman mixers, I opened my laptop and searched for information about the scholarship I had won. There was surprisingly little about it online, just a vague description on the university's financial aid page. No application process, no committee, no history of previous recipients. I closed my laptop, a cold feeling washing over me. For the first time, I wondered if I wasn't there because I'd earned it, but because I'd been placed there. Another move on my parents' grand chessboard. And I was just a pawn. College was supposed to be my first taste of freedom. Every movie I'd ever watched, every book I'd read about university life promised independence, self-discovery, and the chance to reinvent myself. What I got instead was a longer leash, but a leash nonetheless. My schedule arrived in my student email a week before classes began. I hadn't selected a single course. "We took care of your registration," my mother explained over the phone. "Your father, and I thought it would be less stressful this way." I stared at my screen, scanning the list. Organic chemistry, cellular biology, calculus 3, and a freshman seminar on medical ethics. Not a single elective. Not one course I'd chosen myself. "But don't I get to pick anything?" I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. "Of course, sweetheart," she replied. "You can choose your elective next semester, as long as it's relevant to your medical school applications." The first month at Ashworth passed in a blur of lectures, labs, and late-night study sessions. I excelled, of course. I'd been programmed to excel. But while other freshmen were finding their footing, joining clubs, and experimenting with new identities, I followed a script written years before I'd set foot on campus. My phone rang every evening at 8:30 p.m. sharp. "How was biochem today?" my father would ask without preamble. "Did you speak with Professor Harrison about research opportunities?" "Did you finish your lab report?" my mother would chime in from their speakerphone. "Remember, anything less than an A will affect your GPA." When I mentioned joining the campus newspaper just as a science columnist, nothing that would interfere with my studies, my parents exchanged a long silence over the phone. "Is that really the best use of your time, Melissa?" my father finally asked. "The pre-med track doesn't leave much room for distractions." After that, I stopped mentioning my interests altogether. One Tuesday in October, my roommate Kate invited me to a party at the Arts Building. She was an architecture major with paint-splattered jeans and a laugh that filled our tiny room. I envied her freedom, her certainty about her own path. Against my better judgment, I agreed. That night, under colored lights and surrounded by students whose majors I'd never even considered, film studies, ceramics, comparative literature, I felt something loosen in my chest. These people were passionate, alive in a way I'd never allowed myself to be. That's where I met Eli. He was a junior studying music composition, with dark curls and hands that moved constantly as he spoke. He asked about my major, and for once, I found myself wishing I had a different answer. "Biology," I said. "Pre-med track." "And do you love it?" he asked, his head tilted in genuine curiosity. No one had ever asked me that before. I hesitated. "It's what I'm good at." Eli laughed. "That's not what I asked." For the next few weeks, Eli became my secret rebellion. We'd meet at the campus coffee shop, tucked away in a corner where no one who knew my parents would see us. He'd talk about composers and musical theory while I listened, hungry for a world beyond organic chemistry and medical school applications. 2 weeks later, during Thanksgiving break, my father casually mentioned over turkey dinner that he'd heard I'd been spending time with some music student. "One of my fraternity brother's sons saw you at the campus coffee shop," he explained, watching me carefully. "Several times, apparently." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "He's just a friend." "Melissa," my mother said gently, "you know how important focus is right now. You can't afford distractions. Especially not from the arts department," my father added with a dismissive wave. "Those kids are playing at college while you're preparing for a career." By the time I returned to campus, Eli had stopped texting. When I finally ran into him at the coffee shop, his smile was guarded. Your father called my academic advisor, he said quietly. Something about concerns over your academic focus? My face burned with shame. Eli, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. It's okay, he interrupted, though his eyes said it wasn't. But maybe your parents are right. You've got your path and I've got mine. He walked away before I could respond, and just like that, my small rebellion was crushed. As sophomore year approached, I found myself drawn to environmental sciences. A visiting professor's lecture on climate change and public health had ignited something in me, a genuine passion I hadn't felt before. For once, I could imagine a future I actually wanted, combining medicine with environmental advocacy. Heart pounding, I scheduled a meeting with my academic advisor to discuss changing my major, or at least adding it as a second concentration. Dr. Peterson seemed supportive, giving me the paperwork and explaining how many of my credits would transfer. That night, I called my parents, summoning all my courage. I've been thinking about my major. I began carefully. I'm still pre-med, but I'm considering adding environmental sciences as a second concentration. The environmental determinants of health are fascinating, and I think... Absolutely not, my father interrupted. Environmental sciences? That's not serious medicine, Melissa. But Dad, there's groundbreaking research happening in environmental health, and climate change is going to transform medical. This isn't up for discussion, he said firmly. If you change your major, we'll have to reconsider our financial support. Is that clear? The line went quiet. In that silence, I finally heard what had been unspoken all along. My freedom was conditional. My future was not mine to decide. Yes, I whispered. That's clear. The next day, I withdrew my application for the program change. My advisor gave me a searching look, but didn't comment. As I walked back to my dorm, clutching the withdrawn paperwork, something shifted inside me. The first crack in the perfect image I'd maintained for so long. A tiny fracture in the foundation of the life my parents had built. I didn't know it then, but that moment, that first real no, was the beginning of the end. Junior year brought a new opportunity, a prestigious graduate fellowship for top pre-med students. The Peterson Grant Fellowship provided funding for medical school and guaranteed placement in elite research programs. Perfect for the trajectory my parents had designed. The application was grueling. Essays, interviews, and a mountain of documentation proving my academic excellence. I worked on it for weeks, finally submitting it with a mixture of relief and resignation. This was my path. My parents' path. 2 days after submission, I received an email from the fellowship committee requesting additional documentation, specifically proof of my existing scholarships. They needed verification of my Ashworth scholarship for their records. Simple enough, I thought. I'd just request a copy of my award letter from the financial aid office. The woman at the financial aid counter smiled when I approached. What can I help you with? I need a copy of my scholarship award letter, I explained. For the Ashworth Full Merit Scholarship? It's for a fellowship application. Her smile faltered. She typed something into her computer, frowning slightly. I'm sorry, what was your name again? Melissa Williams. More typing. Her brow furrowed deeper. And you said the Ashworth Full Merit Scholarship? Yes, that's right. I've had it since freshman year. She looked up, her expression careful. I don't see any record of that scholarship in your file, Ms. Williams. Your tuition is being paid through direct wire transfers from a private account. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. That's not possible. I received a full scholarship. I have the letter. One moment, she said, typing again. The payments are coming from Williams Family Trust. Monthly installments starting August 2018. My mouth went dry. There must be some mistake. Let me check something else. She disappeared into a back office, returning minutes later with a folder. Your financial package is listed as family contribution. There's no scholarship in our system. May I asked, gesturing to the folder. She hesitated, then slid it across the counter. Inside were printouts of bank transfers, large sums wired each month from my father's private account to Ashworth University, with my student ID in the memo line. I don't understand. I stammered, though the terrible truth was already taking shape in my mind. "It seems your family has been paying your tuition directly," she explained gently. "Many families choose this payment method rather than going through loans. But I received a scholarship letter." I insisted, my voice rising. "On official Ashworth letterhead." She looked uncomfortable now. Sometimes when alumni make significant donations, certain accommodations are made for their children. "Would your parents be university donors?" My father's name was on a plaque in the medical building. His fraternity house had a wing named after our family. My mother chaired 3 alumni committees. "Yes," I whispered. "They're donors." The woman's sympathetic look told me everything I needed to know. I walked back to my dorm in a daze, the world blurring around me. The scholarship I'd been so proud of, the validation of my hard work, the proof I deserved my place here, was fiction. A story my parents had written, complete with forged letterhead and official-looking signatures. That night, I didn't call my parents at our usual time. Instead, I pulled out my laptop and accessed my bank account, the one they'd set up for me when I started college. Every month, like clockwork, $1,000 appeared with the memo, "Scholarship Stipend." Another lie. Their calls went straight to voicemail. 27 missed calls by morning. I waited until the weekend, then took a train home, the scholarship letter burning a hole in my backpack. I found them in the kitchen, my mother chopping vegetables with precise, nervous movements, my father pacing with his phone clutched in his hand. "Melissa." My mother dropped her knife. "Where have you been?" "We've been worried sick." I placed the letter on the marble countertop. "Tell me about my scholarship." The silence that followed was deafening. My parents exchanged a glance, that familiar, conspiratorial look that had always excluded me from the conversations that mattered most. "Sweetheart," my father began, his surgeon's hands fidgeting with his watch. "What's this about?" "The Ashworth Full Merit Scholarship doesn't exist," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "At least, not for me." I went to the financial aid office. They showed me the records. My mother set down her knife and wiped her hands on a dishcloth. "Melissa, you have to understand." "Understand what?" I interrupted. "That you lied to me? That you made me believe I earned something when really, you just bought it for me?" "We gave you an opportunity," my father said, his tone shifting from concerned to defensive. "Do you know how many students would do anything for the education you're getting?" "I never asked for it." The words erupted from some hidden place inside me. "I never asked for any of this." "Don't be ungrateful," my mother snapped. "Everything we've done has been for your future." "No," I said, the realization crystallizing as I spoke. "It's been for your futures, your reputations, your legacy. I'm just the vessel you're pouring it all into." "We wanted what's best for you," my mother said, tears gathering in her eyes. "And honestly, the truth would have distracted you from your studies." There it was, the admission. They didn't even try to deny it. A strange calm settled over me. "I need some air." Upstairs, I grabbed my emergency backpack, the one I'd packed for spring break, but never unpacked. I added my laptop, passport, and the envelope of cash I'd saved for my summer job at the hospital gift shop, the only job my parents had approved because it looked good on medical school applications. I scribbled a note and left it on my perfectly made bed. "Going on a weekend trip with friends. Need some space. Don't call." It wasn't until I was on the train, watching my childhood neighborhood disappear through the window, that I allowed myself to cry. Not tears of sadness or even anger, though there was plenty of that, but tears of relief. For the first time in 21 years, I had made a decision entirely my own. I had chosen to disappear. My first week of freedom was a crash course in real-world survival. The motel room, with its flickering lights and suspicious stains, cost more per night than I'd anticipated. My cash reserves wouldn't last long. I found a cheaper place 3 towns over, a room for rent in a house shared by 3 graduate students who didn't ask many questions. I paid first and last month's rent up front, bought a prepaid phone, and deleted all my social media accounts. It was surprisingly easy to vanish. Terrifying, but easy. The hardest part was what came next, figuring out who I was when no one was watching. I sat at a small desk in my rented room, staring at my laptop, and allowed myself to imagine a different future. Not medicine. Not Ashworth. Not the path that had been mapped out since I was 13. A memory surfaced. Sophomore year, late at night in my dorm room. My roommate had gone home for the weekend, and instead of using the extra study time as my parents would have expected, I'd stayed up designing a website for our dorm floor's charity fundraiser. I'd taught myself basic HTML and CSS through YouTube tutorials watched in secret between biology assignments. It had been the most fun I'd had in college, the hours flying by as I arranged elements on a screen, tweaking colors and fonts until everything looked just right. When the site launched and donations poured in, I felt a quiet pride unlike anything I'd experienced from my perfect grades or academic honors. I'd never told my parents about that project. It didn't fit their narrative. Now I opened a fresh browser window and typed, "How to become a web designer." 6 hours later, I emerged from a research rabbit hole with a plan. I would use my savings to take online courses in web design and development. I would build a portfolio. I would find clients who needed simple websites. I would become Elle Gray, E. Gray Creative, using my middle name and my mother's maiden name. A new identity for my new life. The first month was brutal. I lived on ramen noodles and fear, jumping whenever my phone rang, though it rarely did. No one had my new number. I worked through coding exercises until my eyes burned, pushing through frustration when nothing worked as it should. Without the structure my parents had always provided, I had to learn self-discipline from scratch. To my surprise, I was good at this. Not immediately, but with a persistence that came from somewhere deep inside me, a well of determination I hadn't known existed. When I finally completed my first professional-looking website for a fictional client, I stared at my creation with tears in my eyes. This was mine. No one had told me to build it. No one had guided my hand or edited my work. It was imperfect and entirely my own. Finding real clients proved harder. I created profiles on freelance websites, offering my services at rock-bottom prices. My first job, a simple landing page for a local dog walker, paid just $50, but the client's excited email made me feel like I'd won the Nobel Prize. "This is exactly what I wanted," she wrote. "You really understood my vision." One client led to another. A restaurant menu, a photographer's portfolio, a small online store for a local artisan. Each project taught me something new, and slowly, my prices crept upward. By month 3, I was making enough to cover my rent and groceries barely. Meanwhile, my parents were looking for me. I knew because my former roommate texted my new phone. I'd slipped her my number before leaving, just in case. "Your parents came to campus," Kate wrote. "They talked to everyone. They seem really worried, Em." I felt a twinge of guilt, but pushed it aside. "Tell them I'm safe if they come back," I replied. "But don't tell them anything else." "Are you safe?" she asked. I looked around my small room, at the desk cluttered with design books and sticky notes covered in code snippets, at the wall where I'd taped a handwritten sign. "Your life. Your choice." "Safer than I've ever been," I wrote back. 6 months after my disappearance, a miracle happened. A design blog featured one of my websites in a new talent spotlight. My inbox flooded overnight with inquiries from potential clients, real businesses with real budgets. Among them was an email that changed everything. "I saw your portfolio and love your aesthetic. Our tech startup needs a complete brand overhaul. Website, logo, business cards, the works. Are you available for a 3-month contract? Budget, $15,000. I read the email 7 times, convinced it was a mistake. That was more money than my parents sent me in an entire semester. For doing work I loved. I took the contract. Then another. And another. By the end of my first year of freedom, E. Gray Creative had a waiting list of clients and a reputation for clean, intuitive designs. I moved out of the shared house into my own small apartment. I bought furniture that wasn't secondhand. I started a retirement account. And I never once considered going back. My parents didn't give up easily. They filed a missing persons report, though the police didn't pursue it seriously once they confirmed I was an adult who had left voluntarily. They hired a private investigator, I learned this from Kate, who was still my only connection to my old life. They even appeared on a local news segment about college student stress and disappearances. "We just want to know she's okay," my mother said, her perfect makeup streaked with tasteful tears. "Melissa, if you're watching this, please come home. Whatever you're going through, we can fix it together." I watched the clip on my laptop, a strange detachment settling over me. The woman on the screen, poised, articulate in her grief, was a stranger to me now. So was the daughter she described, brilliant, dedicated Melissa who had suffered a nervous breakdown from academic pressure. They couldn't conceive of a world where I had simply chosen a different path. As my business grew, I built safeguards around my new identity. I never met clients in person, conducting all business through video calls and emails. I used a P.O. box for mail. I paid taxes under my legal name, but operated my business under E. Gray. I even began to think of myself as Elle, confident, creative Elle who made her own choices. Melissa felt like a character in a story I'd read long ago. 2 years into my new life, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. "I know who you are. Your parents are still looking for you. I saw your work online and recognized your style from that charity website you built in college. Are you okay? Should I tell them anything? Eli." My heart stopped. Eli from the music department. The boy whose gentle questions had first made me question my path. I stared at his email for hours before responding. "I'm more than okay. I'm finally living my own life. Please don't tell them anything. But thank you for caring enough to ask. Now he." He respected my wishes. And somehow, knowing that someone from my old life knew about my new one made me feel less like a ghost. 3 years after walking away, I caught a glimpse of myself in a store window and didn't immediately recognize the woman staring back. Gone was the perfect posture, the sensible haircut, the anxious eyes. In their place was someone with purple-tipped hair, relaxed shoulders, and a confidence that came from building something real. I had become someone my parents wouldn't recognize either, not just in appearance, but in essence. And that was exactly the point. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, buried between client messages and newsletter subscriptions. The subject line was unremarkable: website and brand consultation request, Williams Consulting Group. I almost deleted it without reading. Another day, another corporate inquiry. E. Gray Creative had grown enough that I could now be selective about clients, focusing on projects that excited me, usually small businesses with interesting stories or nonprofits doing meaningful work. Corporate gigs paid well, but often lacked soul. Still, curiosity made me click. "Dear Ms. Gray, my name is Marcus Jennings, Marketing Director at Williams Consulting Group. Our firm specializes in healthcare management solutions, and we're experiencing some digital challenges. Our website is outdated, our client portal has security vulnerabilities, and frankly, our entire digital presence needs a complete overhaul. Several of our clients have mentioned your work, particularly the medical equipment marketplace you designed last year. Your understanding of both aesthetics and user experience in the healthcare space is exactly what we need. Would you be available for an initial consultation next week? We're prepared to discuss a significant budget for the right partner. Regards, Marcus Jennings, Marketing Director, Williams Consulting Group." I froze, my coffee mug suspended halfway to my lips. Williams Consulting Group. It couldn't be. With trembling fingers, I opened a new browser tab and searched. The company website appeared, sleek but clearly outdated, with a design at least 5 years behind current trends. And there they were, prominently featured on the About Us page. Dr. James Williams and Dr. Catherine Williams, founders and principal consultants. My parents' smiling faces stared back at me from professional headshots. They looked older than I remembered. New lines around my father's eyes, threads of silver in my mother's perfectly highlighted hair. 5 years had passed after all. According to the website, Williams Consulting Group provided strategic advisory services to hospitals and medical practices. Founded 10 years ago as a side venture, it had apparently grown into my parents' primary business since my disappearance. They'd left their medical practices to focus on consulting full-time. I should have deleted the email immediately. Closed the browser. forgotten I'd ever seen it. Instead, I responded, "Dear Mr. Jennings, thank you for your interest in E. Gray Creative. I'd be happy to discuss your project needs. Would a video call on Thursday at 2 p.m. work for your schedule? Best, L. Gray." I told myself I was being professional, that refusing a potential client based on personal history would be unprofessional, that I was simply curious to learn more about the project. Deep down, I knew the truth. Some part of me wanted to see them again, from a safe distance, on my terms. Thursday arrived too quickly. I spent an absurd amount of time deciding what to wear for the video call, settling finally on a simple black turtleneck that looked nothing like anything Melissa Williams would have worn. I swept my hair, now cut in an asymmetrical bob with faded purple ends, into a sleek style that projected confidence. I put on makeup that was subtle, but distinctive. I hardly recognized myself, which was exactly the point. At precisely 2 p.m., I clicked Join Meeting and took a deep breath. Marcus Jennings appeared first, a harried-looking man in his 40s with a rumpled suit and kind eyes. "Ms. Gray, thank you for making time for us. I've got the team joining now." The screen flickered as new participants connected. And then, there they were. My father looked smaller somehow, his commanding presence diminished by the awkward framing of his webcam. My mother sat beside him, her posture still perfect, her expression professionally pleasant. Neither showed any sign of recognition. Why would they? The daughter they knew, the one whose life they had orchestrated down to the minute, had vanished years ago. The woman on their screen was a stranger. Confident, successful, entirely self-made. "Ms. Gray," Marcus began, "let me introduce our founders, Dr. James Williams and Dr. Catherine Williams. Doctors, this is L. Gray, the designer I was telling you about." My father nodded curtly. "Nice to meet you, Ms. Gray." My mother smiled. "Your portfolio is quite impressive." Their voices, so familiar yet distant, sent a shock through me. I had rehearsed this moment, prepared my responses, but nothing could have readied me for the surreal experience of being introduced to my own parents. "Likewise," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "Mr. Jennings mentioned you're facing some digital challenges. Perhaps you could tell me more about your needs." For 30 minutes, I listened as they outlined their problems: an outdated website, security vulnerabilities, poor user experience, declining client engagement. Marcus did most of the talking, with my parents occasionally interjecting with clinical precision, the same tone they'd used when discussing my academic performance. "Our client portal is particularly problematic," my father explained. "We've lost 3 major hospital contracts this quarter due to data security concerns. And our competitors have more visually appealing interfaces," my mother added, the admission clearly painful for her. I took notes, asked questions, gave preliminary suggestions, all while watching their faces for any flicker of recognition. There was nothing. Not when I smiled, my mother's smile. Not when I absently tucked hair behind my ear, a gesture I'd inherited from my father. "Based on what you've shared," I said, wrapping up the call, "I believe I can help. I'll prepare a proposal outlining my approach and fee structure." "Excellent," Marcus said, visibly relieved. "When might we expect?" "One moment," my mother interrupted, leaning closer to her camera. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Ms. Gray, have we met before? You seem familiar somehow." A cold wave washed over me. I kept my expression neutral, professional. "I don't believe so, Dr. Williams. I would remember." She shook her head, laughing lightly. "Of course. My mistake. I meet so many people in this business." As the call ended, my father's final words lingered. "We look forward to your proposal, Ms. Gray. We're in quite desperate need of someone with your unique perspective." I closed my laptop and sat in silence, heart hammering. They hadn't recognized me. Not really. Just a vague sense of familiarity, easily dismissed. I should have felt relieved. Instead, a complicated emotion took hold, disappointment tangled with vindication. After all those years of scrutiny, of being the center of their universe, they couldn't even recognize their own daughter. That night, I opened a new document, and began drafting a proposal for Williams Consulting Group. The professional part of my brain worked automatically, outlining scope, timeline, deliverables, costs. But another part of me was planning something else entirely. A reckoning. I named my price high, triple my usual rate, partly to discourage them, partly because working with them would require emotional labor beyond my standard services. I added clauses requiring face-to-face meetings, on-site consultations. I was setting a trap, baiting it with exactly what they needed most. 3 days later, Marcus Jennings called to accept my proposal without negotiation. The doctors were quite impressed, he said. They specifically requested that you handle their project personally. I'd be happy to, I replied. Let's schedule our first in-person meeting for next week. As I hung up, a strange calm settled over me. After 5 years of hiding, of building a new identity brick by careful brick, I was willingly stepping back into their orbit. But this time on my terms. This time, as Elle Gray, successful entrepreneur, sought-after designer. This time, as someone they had to impress. Stopped abruptly, his hands suspended in midair. His eyes narrowed, then widened in stunned recognition. "Melissa," he whispered, the color draining from his face. Behind him, my mother gasped, one hand flying to her throat. "It can't be." I remained seated, perfectly still, watching the shock ripple across their faces. 5 years of questions, of searching, of wondering, all answered in a single moment of recognition that came too late. "Hello," I said calmly. "I believe we have a meeting scheduled to discuss your website redesign." "My God," my mother breathed, taking an unsteady step forward. "Melissa, is it really you?" I gestured to the chairs across from me. "Perhaps you should sit down." They moved like sleepwalkers, lowering themselves into the ergonomic chairs that faced mine across the polished conference table. My father's usual commanding presence had evaporated. My mother's careful composure was cracking visibly. "Where have you been?" My father's voice cracked. "We've been looking everywhere for you. Private investigators, police reports." "I know," I interrupted. "I saw the news segment. Why didn't you contact us?" My mother's eyes filled with tears, perfectly symmetrical tracks of mascara marking her cheeks. "We thought you might be finished. We thought." "I needed to find out who I was," I said simply. "Without you deciding for me." The silence that followed was thick with 5 years of unspoken words. My father recovered first, his surgeon's pragmatism reasserting itself. "Well, you're here now. That's what matters. We can help you get back on track. There are programs that will consider your case despite the interruption in your studies. I have colleagues at Johns Hopkins who..." I laughed. The sound startled all three of us with its genuine amusement. "You still don't understand," I said, shaking my head. "I'm not coming back. I'm not here to reconnect or to be rescued. I'm here because Marcus Jennings hired me to redesign your website." "This is absurd," my mother snapped, anger replacing her initial shock. "You disappear for 5 years, then show up pretending to be some computer person? You had a future, Melissa. A real future." "I have a future," I corrected her. "Just not the one you planned." Gray Creative is a successful design firm with clients across the country. I make more money than your monthly scholarship payments ever provided. I opened my laptop and turned it to face them, displaying my portfolio. "This is my work. This is what I've built, alone. Without your connections, your money, or your name." My father stared at the screen, comprehension slowly dawning. "You've been doing this all along? While we were searching hospitals and morgues?" "I sent word that I was safe," I said. "You chose not to believe it. A text message from a burner phone is hardly. It was all you deserved." I cut in, my voice hardening. "After everything you did. After the lies, the manipulation, the forged scholarship letter." My mother flinched. "We were trying to protect you." "From what?" I demanded. "From making my own choices? From discovering what I actually wanted from my life." "From failure," my father said quietly. "From wasting your potential on this." He gestured dismissively at my laptop. Something cold and final settled in my chest. Even now, seeing my success, my independence, they couldn't acknowledge the validity of my choices. This discussion is pointless, I said, closing my laptop. I came here for a business meeting. If you're not interested in my professional services, I'll be on my way. Wait, my mother said desperately. You can't just leave again. We're your parents. No, I replied evenly. You are my handlers, my architects, but you were never really my parents. My father's face darkened. After everything we sacrificed for you. You sacrificed nothing, I interrupted. You invested. You built a dollhouse and put me in it. When I finally broke free, you didn't look for me. You looked for the doll that escaped. I stood, gathering my belongings with deliberate calm. You didn't raise a daughter, I continued. You built a dollhouse. Now the doll lives elsewhere. My father's anger, so familiar from my childhood, flared. How dare you speak to us this way? After everything we've done for you, the opportunities we provided, the connections we made, you ungrateful. James, my mother warned, placing a restraining hand on his arm. He shook her off. No, Catherine. She needs to hear this. You think you've built something impressive? This little business of yours? You could have been exceptional. You could have changed medicine. Instead, you're making pretty pictures on screens. I smiled then, a genuine smile that seemed to unsettle him more than anger would have. That's the difference between us, I said. You measure value by status, recognition, power. I measure it by freedom. And by that measure, I'm wealthier than you'll ever be. My mother rose, her composure recovered enough to try a different approach. Melissa, whatever you call yourself now. We've made mistakes. We see that now. But we're still your family. Please, give us a chance to know the person you've become. For a fleeting moment, I allowed myself to imagine it, some carefully negotiated relationship with boundaries and conditions. Sunday dinners where they'd subtly critique my choices. Holiday gatherings where they'd introduce me with strained smiles. Our daughter, the website designer. No, I said finally. Some damage can't be undone. I walked to the door, then paused, turning back to face them one last time. You should know I won't be taking your project. I'd recommend Horizon Digital. They do excellent work with healthcare clients. So that's it. My father's voice was hoarse. You appear after 5 years just to reject us again? I didn't come here for you, I said simply. I came for me, to finally face the past I've been running from. To see if the people who controlled every aspect of my existence for 21 years would even recognize me as I truly am. My mother was crying openly now. Will we ever see you again? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with a lifetime of expectations, demands, and disappointed hopes. I don't know, I answered honestly. That depends on whether you ever truly see me at all. With that, I walked out of the glass conference room, through the reception area, and into the cool autumn air outside. I didn't look back to see if they followed. I knew they wouldn't, not immediately. They would be too stunned, too confused by the transformation of their perfect creation into someone they couldn't control. As I walked down the busy street, my phone buzzed with notifications, new client inquiries, messages from friends I'd made in my new life, a reminder about dinner with my neighbor, real connections I'd formed. Real work I'd created, a real life I'd built. I breathed deeply, feeling the last weight of my past finally lifting. They still didn't know where I lived. They didn't know my friends, my favorite coffee shop, the name of my cat, or how I spent my Sunday mornings. They didn't know that I sometimes painted watercolors, or that I was learning to play the guitar, or that I volunteered teaching coding to kids from low-income neighborhoods. They didn't know me at all. And for the first time, that felt not like a loss, but like the greatest freedom.